April 23rd, 2019 Planning Commission meeting to order. And if we can have a roll call, please.
Fisher,
Here.
Schultz,
Here.
McPherson,
Here.
Lane,
Here.
Manson,
Present.
Hempel,
Here.
and Commissioner Garrett is absent this evening. He let us know earlier today.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda?
Barely,
Yes.
yes.
And if so, can I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Has everybody taken a look at the meeting minutes from March 25th? And if so, do they have any modifications or corrections? Hearing none, if I could have a motion and a second to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve minutes from last month's meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I abstain because I wasn't here, so, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't here either.
Disclosure of conflicts of interest. Does anybody have any conflicts on any business in front of the board tonight? How about outside communications on any item in front of the board tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to call to public. If there's anybody out there in the audience who would like to get up and speak, say what's on their mind, anything they want, we would love to listen, and that's what we're here for. And it's a 4-minute time limit, so seeing no takers, I will move on to the item 5, public hearing. There are no public hearings tonight. Item 6, old business. There is no old business. I would assume that the update on the master plan is old business.
Well, that's interesting, Rich. I wasn't gonna make our guests this evening
Listen to.
listen through the whole discussion we're gonna have tonight, so I just.
Okay.
We couldn't imagine anyone would even notice that.
All right, that's cool. So there's no old business. New business. Consider preliminary plat, Hike 10, Commerce Park. If we could please have staff report on this item.
Richard, nothing gets past you, I'm telling you. You got that. You got the old business, new business. It's
Okay.
it's old business, but we're calling it new business tonight, so. What you have before you, agenda item 7A is the Commerce Park preliminary plat. There's the tracks that was presented at the last planning commission meeting that were rezoned to C2. City council has since approved those. The protest period has passed, so those are officially now zone C2. So this plat reflects that zoning change and also the items that were in your packet as far as the layout, street design, utilities, grading, a lot of things, preliminary sort of type of engineering that we look at when we're doing a preliminary plat. We'll take you through the technical review. Just for your information, the notification letters were sent out to nearby residents. The sign was put up, so we followed. We also advertised in the legal record. So all this public notification has been completed. Another item for you to consider tonight is the preliminary plat is being considered for a tax increment financing district. And as part of our discussion tonight, the applicant will want you to affirm that this is, the proposed development is in conformance with the current DeSoto comprehensive plan. So that'll be part of the suggested motion tonight. Just going through the technical conditions that we went through for this. There's a lot of sort of standard things: the size of the plat, proposed name, subdivision, addresses of developer, engineer, surveyor, those type things. All those items were in conformance with the information that we require in our city code, all the supplemental data, review of public utilities, preliminary grading plan. Landscaping plan is not shown, however. We did include a note that the applicant, when the site plans are submitted, will follow the DeSoto code for landscaping, and so it wasn't part of this submittal. They did submit a erosion control plan, and that has been approved by Mike, and also a stormwater drainage study that has been also reviewed by staff. It's a pretty straightforward proposal. You can see the items on the preliminary plat. The street names have been determined. We've gone through a lot of the processes, had several meetings, phone calls back and forth between myself and Justin Milburn, who's the engineer on the project. I guess with that, I will stand for any questions. It's a pretty standard proposal that you have before you tonight. It follows the rezoning that Planning Commission and Council have both approved. So or Mike and I are ready to answer any questions. Again, the applicant is here tonight if you have any comments or questions for them as well.
Well, Brad, for you, is there any, and I get confused on the definition of retention or detention. Retained water stays there a while and then it leaves the site. Retained water.
Retained water stays there permanently, or, you know, there will always be water in a retention area. Detention is just detained for a period of time, supposed to be 24 hours. It's supposed to be, or maybe up to 48, but then it leaves the site slowly.
As part of this proposal, there's just one.
Yeah, Richard,
That is correct.
I can, yeah, address that, right. There's one detention pond for everything north of Commerce Drive. And the stormwater drainage study that was submitted, our criteria allow for the applicant to analyze the downstream conditions of the downstream drainage elements between the site and a designated 100-year floodplain. So in this case, the 100-year floodplain exists within the K-10 right-of-way just east of the southeast corner of the proposed platted lots. And the runoff, the drainage from kind of the northern portion of this site crosses under Commerce Drive and heads across Hutamaki property before it gets to that floodplain. So rather than try and improve or analyze the system as it goes through the Hutamaki property, they proposed a stormwater detention facility in the northeast corner there. On the south side of the property, what the drainage study did is look at all the drainage elements between the property and that 100-year floodplain to ensure that the runoff from a 100-year storm event wouldn't endanger any structures, property, and wouldn't flood any private or public property. It'll stay inside the right-of-way for K-10. The drainage culvert, there's a culvert under K-10 that travels to the south, and right at the outlet of that culvert is the 100-year floodplain. The other route is kind of straight east along the north side of K-10 to Kill Creek, essentially. So they've analyzed both those routes and determined that the storm sewer elements are capable of conveying the 100-year flow without the need for stormwater detention on the south half. And that's much like Harps did the same thing when they went. So there's no stormwater detention on Harps, but they made that same analysis. So this was kind of a refresh of that.
Well, I wouldn't have paid any attention to it except it's in red on there. Red usually
The storm
catches
storm
my
sewer's
eye.
on red.
Yeah,
red,
and,
yeah.
and you got these two-point discharges on the state property, and that's all fine and well.
Yeah.
Richard, I also want to, if I may, there's a couple items on the suggested motion with the staff conditions. One is, you'll notice the on the plat itself, there are two access points where the public road ties into a private road situation. We want to make sure that as part of the approval that the applicant and the owners of those driveways have an agreement in place that allows for unimpeded public access from the public street to the private street. They also are potentially working on a situation where at least the Jake's fireworks street might be dedicated to the city, but As part of our condition, we want to make sure that that road or access way stays open to the public at all times. A couple other things that came up was the sight lines along Commerce Drive. We will have some restriction on Commerce Drive. We don't want to have a whole bunch of curb cuts on those areas, so there might be potentially one for Lot 1 that lines up with the Harps Drive, but other than that, they'll have some restricted use or restrictions on access to Commerce Drive.
Questions? These private drives onto the two streets, what if both Harps and Jake's say no? How's that gonna change this whole plan?
Well, at that point, and that's why we have the conditions, conditionally approved, but those would have to be cul-de-sacs then. And they would have to come back to some degree before the
So at
plan.
this point, we have no direction from either the the Jakes or Harps on how they're gonna go with this?
Well,
Well,
the applicant's indicated that he's got at least verbal approval of the concept. We would just need to see the formal easements written up. So I think, well, and maybe he can address a little better.
I can address it if you're ready.
Okay.
Well, let's finish staff
Okay.
and then maybe get staff back up, but if you don't mind, we'll just wait and finish staff and then that'd be the first question when the applicant gets up.
Okay.
So outside of that, so we got the point discharge, the retention, all good as far as the private public drive connection is the next thing that came up. Anybody think of anything else while staff is still up here? There's a water line shown somewhere. And it's the blue W.
The blue lines, yeah.
Okay. I don't have any further questions for staff at this point in time. If we could have, unless you have anything
No,
else. you wanna-
I'm good, Richard.
So, if there is a person in the audience who'd like to get up and speak as the owner applicant, please stand up, state your name and address.
Travis Hicks with Hike Properties. Thank you for allowing me to present this tonight. I wanted to address the question regarding the access easements. And then Justin, our engineer, is here to discuss any technical site plan or plat questions that you might have. As far as the access easements, there is an cross-access, cross-use easement recorded when we sold the Lot 2 Jake's Fireworks. As a part of that closing, there is a recorded document allowing for that cross-access, cross-use.
So why are we still asking for it then?
I guess, Ian, we have not, unless you've got that, Mike, I've not seen that document, so I just want to have a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
In both instances, when there's
I think we should have all that before we get a lot of this other stuff done. 'Cause that's gonna make a difference on whether it's a road, whether these people are interested, or whether it's gonna be a cul-de-sac or whatever.
Well, that's part of why it's a conditional approval. It's an approval based on these conditions. So as soon as Travis can give me a copy of the document, then
And as far as and we'll get that to you, it's a recorded document. The Harps cross-access, we have been, it's been a multi-year negotiation with Harps to allow for this cross-access. They have agreed to allow for this. We have restrictions that they put on us as far as uses on the property. But that's been in an agreement, and it's back and forth. Our attorney, Matt Goff, is here. The draft has been, as far as the access agreement, been presented to their legal staff, and it's back and forth. But the concept and the deal points for the cross-access with Harps has been agreed, and it's a condition of the approval. Okay.
Did it cost you a pound of bacon or what? I'm just kidding. That's kind of odd. I mean, it just seems odd that they would do that, but that's good. I'm glad.
Well, they ask for restrictions as far as property use. They don't want another grocery store there, obviously. They don't want a pharmacy there. They don't want a fuel station there, those kind of things that,
So we have no idea what their restrictions are.
He just told you.
Well, to a point, yeah.
those will be disclosed in the recorded document as soon as that is finalized. And, but in summary, it is, grocery store, pharmacy, fuel station on those lots next to it. Things that they are already doing, correct.
So there's nothing that would prohibit any competition on the other side, though?
No.
Just a general statement. The private drive concept saves money because you don't have to build as wide a street or something like that, or it's what's the advantage for these private drives?
Well, the private drives we don't own, so we don't have the ability to. Now, if Jake's agrees to make that public, then that's a discussion that the city can have with Jake's.
Richard, also, when we approved the Jake's site plan, that road is actually built to city standards. There's gutter and also a sidewalk that needs to the interior of that lot. Allow pedestrian access all the way back to Jake's fireworks location.
Is that how they designed their road access to their building? That just exactly like that in that spot? Okay, all right.
They indicated at some point they might sell that piece
On the,
north side of it. So they designed it specifically that way so they could have
okay, all right.
opportunity in the future.
So I'm not sure what I just heard. I asked if that was why that was a private drive. It is a private drive. Those streets.
The developer
The
puts
T-
in the road and turns it over to the city for maintenance, right?
Well, that's what I want to hear.
Well, at this point, they've not turned it over to us, and they would be maintaining it. However, there has been some discussion about them turning it over to us, but they would have to go through a final plat of some sort to actually get the city council to accept the easements and right of ways. At this point, it's a private drive. They maintain it, they plow the snow and all those things now. As Mike has pointed out, we have a snow plow going on 92nd Terrace. We'll probably just keep it going and push snow. But other than that, it's theirs to maintain the way it is set up right now.
I think this was a timing thing. So when we did Jake's, they were wanting to come in. This concept was in I think Mr. Hicks's mind that this street would come down here and then parallel Commerce Drive to create these lot divisions, but he wasn't ready to move forward with it at that time. So when we planned and approved Jake's, it's shown as a private drive. Now, practically, it makes more sense for that to be a public road. So they built it to city standards. They did acquire the cross-access agreement for that, but they haven't taken the formal step of dedicating that as a public right-of-way. Now, it's not in yet, obviously, but they're building it now. Once it's done, it could be dedicated as a public right-of-way, so it'll be a public road just like all the others. Now, with the Harps, sort of a similar thing, except Harps, they're a standalone commercial use on a private lot. Their access road up that east property line, not at all uncommon for that to be a private drive. Also, not at all uncommon for two private drives to connect off of the street. See that all the time in big shopping centers, spaces like this. It's a pet peeve of everybody when those don't connect. You have to go back out to the street and come back in. This sort of thing, this cross-access agreement with Harps, is a very just run-of-the-mill agreement between, in a commercial development setting. The things with Jake's is a little different because we're looking at it like it's a public street, but it went in before we thought we knew it would be a public street. That's the one that's a little different. The Harps thing is just everyday. It's an everyday sort of thing.
I might add that the reason that Jake's went that route was because they wanted to get their building up and functioning with an occupancy permit before the 4th of July. So, and their property was already platted, so they didn't have to go through a preliminary plat. They just do a rezoning and then write the site plan. So that's the this is a different process, even though the result is ultimately going to be a large commercial district along Commerce Drive. So at some point, everything will get all married up in the end, but it's just been two different sort of processes.
Okay, within a single plat, there's two lot ones. Two lot
Yeah, I didn't
twos.
see a
It's
block
kinda
number.
confusing.
One of those is block 1, one's block 2. I don't know which is which.
Yeah, Justin Milburn with Milburn Civil Engineering. I'm the civil engineer for the preliminary plat in front of you. Let me just start off here. The total development is easy for me to come up here and point to this stuff.
I like this, yeah.
Development is 14 acres north and south, so 7 on the north and then 7 on the south. The plat includes more or less a development of just about 1,530 linear feet of public street, which includes a street here highlighted in darker gray. So that's roughly 1,500.
You called them public.
Yeah, it's a public, it'll be a dedicated street. We're gonna plat that, so hopefully the plat will be coming through here within the next month. So we're gonna dedicate 50-foot of right of way over that street. We'll have a 24-foot wide street section with curb and gutter on both sides. So by constructing that street, we'll be able to develop 8 commercial lots. So there'd be 5 on the south side and then 3 on the north. So that's where the block, it's a different block. So the north side's a different block than the south. So that's why they have lot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the south, and then lot 1, 2, 3 on the north. So it's separated by, public right of way. So since a different block is what it's going to be.
What's the ground between Jake's and Commerce Drive? That's correct. It's already platted.
Yeah, that's Jake's own.
Jake's property.
Yeah.
That's
This
technically
whole thing-
not part of this plat. but-
Sorry, this plat actually just includes this area right here on the side.
That's a blank slate that something may happen or may not.
Right, yeah.
We don't
Yeah,
know.
Jake's owns that and they could do
Whatever. Okay.
whatever they want with that. So yeah, really the preliminary plat before you is just this area right here. Just this here is roughly 7 acres.
Okay.
On the south side. So the total's 14. So it's 7 on the north and 7 on the south. So along with the construction of the public roads are going to include public utilities, like you're talking about the red lines are the storm sewer, and then the purple lines are the sanitary sewer, that includes the water. So we're going to design the utilities to be able to serve each of the individual lots. So each of the lots will have access to storm sewer, sanitary, and water lines. And also we'll have sidewalks for pedestrian access throughout the site. So we'll have a sidewalk adjacent to the public roads inside the right of way.
Okay, you said there are how many lots on the north side of Commerce Drive?
3. Actually, sorry, 4. One's a detention lot. This is where the detention basin is.
Lot 3.
Yeah, lot 3 is actually just a detention basin. And then there'll be 3 developable lots on the north side. So there's a large lot
Yeah.
to the north and then 2 smaller ones. So roughly the average lot size is going to be between 1 to 1.4 acres, excluding this big one. The big one's a different animal, but the smaller ones are the 1 to 1.4 acres. So it'll be a lot easier lots to sell than the bigger ones.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for
Questions or
the applicant? I'm just curious, just overall concept. Refresh my memory. This is done, you foresee like retail, or maybe this should go to Mr. Hicks.
Yep.
I don't know, question. Just curiosity. What will we see here? Or you don't know what we'll see, but
As far as
you have a
types of
better idea than
uses,
we do.
this is better suited for restaurant, drive-through, retailer, and professional office type, all of which I've had discussions with, those types of tenants. So we're working on bringing those types of tenants to the property. Many different commercial uses, so a variety of different uses that might come up.
All right.
questions for me?
Um,
So if I understand you correctly, you said you are planning the roads?
Yes, yes.
So that'll be a future.
Yeah. So hopefully within a month or so, we'd be coming back through with the plat, with the final plat.
there's nothing else in red on here, so it's hard for me to read. All these other lines kind of blend together. I guess I don't have anything else at this point in time.
Thank you.
Well, okay, this you can answer this where you're seated, I guess. You know, you go down the middle of K10 right now, and there's this big crack, and the highway department's cutting this notch out. It's cut. I assume it's because, and I'm going to get to the point in a second. I assume it's because two strips of asphalt were poured at different times, and there's a cold joint there, and that cold joint hadn't held up. So how do you make a good cold joint to an existing driveway with asphalt?
Well, they'd have to go back and then mill the existing asphalt back and
Lay,
then lay it back in.
okay. And that's something that the city's adept at, or you
Yeah,
know
it
what to look
happens
for.
quite often. Yeah,
Happens
yeah.
all the
happens
time.
all over.
Never
Usually,
had
you
a
put a
problem.
little crack seal right at the joint line. You put a little crack seal there.
Crack sealer.
Crack
Okay.
seal material.
All right. Well, sorry for the side trip. That just came to mind because I hit one of those. They milled one of those things out and left it that deep, and I hit a couple of them the other night.
Well, you won't be going 70 on these, I hope.
That was something I was curious about, where that transitions from Harp's parking lot over to, what, 91st? Is there any thought of putting a speed bump there to deter people from just shooting through into Harp's parking lot? And
We haven't got to that point just yet.
You'll probably need a stop sign. We would not allow speed bump on a city street under any circumstance. Harps can put them in if they want, but they won't be on our street. Not a good idea.
I just, with that whole picture up there, I can just envision somebody shooting through there and zipping in front of Harp's with the people coming in and out going faster than.
Definitely need
Yeah, they got the
stop
crosswalk
signs.
coming out with
Yeah.
groceries and stuff. It ought to have a stop sign.
Travis said stop sign probably.
Stop sign works for me.
Or turn, right turn, left turn only, or something. I don't know.
It's the only question I had.
Oh, surely you have something.
I don't.
No. All looks good.
Looks wonderful.
What do you think, Ian? As long as it's built right,
Yeah,
it's dedicated right, drains right,
it better.
got street lighting.
Yeah, that's,
Fire department can get in. And
are there
out.
street lights going on that? I haven't seen any, but I didn't look.
Yeah, there will be.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to submit public improvement plans for the whole plat. So that's one of the plans we have to submit with the road plan. We just haven't got to that point just yet. I mean, we'll submit that to city staff.
Yeah, so what happens on a plat like this, once the final plat comes through, because these are public streets, there'll be a separate set of public improvement documents that gets reviewed by staff. And then, like Todd was saying, the developer goes and builds the streets. And during that time, the city project inspector is out there and making sure it's in accordance with the city specs. Once they're done, they turn it over to the city for operation, maintenance, and ownership. So we'll be plowing the snow, we'll be patching the potholes.
Mr. Milburn, did you draw the water lines on here? Okay, we've got a plumber here.
Okay?
All right, so here's my question. The shortest distance between 2 points is usually a straight line,
Right?
but there's a water line that follows this arc. I mean, why would not that water line,
Which one are you talking about?
The one on the curve.
yeah,
That
go
one's
on the curve.
existing.
Yeah.
existing.
Why would that water line go like diagonal across all, I mean, why wouldn't it?
Because
like,
you'll have buildings on top of it at some point. You can tear up a road, but you can't tear a building down.
Well,
to
there's
fix
an
a line.
easement, there's an easement
Which
to
one
it.
is it?
Well,
This one right
The
here?
one right there on the curve.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
just
that's
curious why that would not like stay in the easement between beyond, just off the pavement. That's my question. You're gonna be,
Well, that's an existing line. We're not putting
oh,
that in.
existing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's existing. If we did it today, we'd probably ask them to stay out from under the pavement, you know, put a bend in it or something a little
Yeah.
different than what was done, but.
Anything we have proposed is the non-dash line, it's a straight line. So anything you see with the dash line, that's existing. So anything
Okay.
exterior is the
Yeah.
proposed stuff. So on that one there, we have it set back 4 foot from back to curb.
Okay, and you didn't run diagonal across the
I didn't
streets,
either.
okay, good.
depending on the size of the line too, it's easier to do it that way.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got.
Yeah, I guess.
Anybody like to say anything? Looks, I mean, it appears that I mean, it'd be nice to get something built down there, and it's been sitting there for a long time. And, you know, if this is what it takes, then that's what it takes. So commotion activity, that's good. Well, hearing no further comments, is anybody interested?
Just for clarification on the action we're taking, it's really kind of two actions in one. First is just a straightforward consideration of a preliminary plat, which is kind of the nuts and bolts we've been talking about. And then the second one has to do with the applicant's tax incentive request, a TIF request. Last week, the council approved the TIF district that essentially includes the area of the preliminary plat. That establishes the existence of a tax increment financing district. Statutorily, before we can approve the specifics of that, the Planning Commission is charged with making a determination as to whether or not the land uses and the lot arrangement, basically the development plan, is in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. It's just a statutory requirement that's placed on the Planning Commission. So it's that approval as well. You're approving the TIF project plan, which essentially is what you have here in front of you, but also attached to your staff report. There was this narrative about what the redevelopment's going to be, like Mr. Hicks has described. He's talking about commercial, office, retail sort of uses in there. The TIF district is a mechanism where you can take the increase in property tax value, divert some of those funds to pay the developer back for the construction costs of the infrastructure. And in this case, the infrastructure is the roads and the water lines and the sewers, things like that. Planning Commission is not asked to make a judgment on the cost benefit of the finances involved or the advisability of offering incentives, only that the project plan is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And from a staff perspective, we would recommend that you do make that determination. We do feel it is consistent with the comp plan. So those are the two, just procedurally, actions we're asking of the Planning Commission tonight.
Mike, one quick question. On a TIF, the city still retains the initial taxes that's not abated for 20 years. It's only on the improvements. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The TIF, the I in TIF is increment. So what you do is you establish a baseline property value before the development. We'll keep, all of those taxes still keep coming in. And then the increment is the value after it's completely developed and there's businesses operating there. That's the increment. And in this case, the applicant is asking for only 80% of that, so it wouldn't even be all of that. And there's no sales tax involved either. So we collect and keep any sales tax that's generated by the development of the properties too.
So we do keep all the sales tax?
Yeah, the sales tax doesn't get diverted to the TIF. Well, that's the proposal as council hasn't approved it, but they'll be considering it in the next month or so.
Thank you.
Okay, was there I may have missed it, was there a recommended language on what,
two separate motions.
I think to be safe. Well, did you talked with
page 4 of
Kevin, didn't you?
Yeah, he just basically wanted to make sure that the project conforms, those words are spoken and it conforms to
I've got it.
current DeSoto comprehensive
Yeah.
plan is somewhere in that approval. Maybe it's easier to have them separate.
I got it.
I think it would be easier to have them, or better to have them separate.
2 separate.
Yeah.
So we need number 1, which can be page 4 like that statement, and then we
Yeah.
need a second one, which is the proposed development is in conformance with the comprehensive plan.
The TIF
current-
project plan
Yeah.
is in conformance.
So they should be 2 separate motions, 2 separate votes.
I think so. Yeah, I think that'd be best.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'd be fine. Well, how about if we take the easy one, that this is in compliance with the comprehensive plan first? Would anybody like to make and this is a recommendation to city council?
This one's just a
Or no, this
finding.
is-
It's just a finding of the planning commission that it conforms. Yeah.
On that topic, I don't, and this is, in my opinion, this is definite conformance with the comprehensive plan, unless anybody else sees it different, or,
I'll make a motion.
okay, if we could make a motion, please, and read it, say it slow, so Anna can.
I'd make a motion that the DeSoto Planning Commission approve the preliminary plat with the following conditions, 1 through 6, for Hike 10 Commerce Park.
Okay, we're doing that first, and then the other one. Hold on a minute, I need to reread. Sorry, I thought we were doing the project
Oh, sorry.
plan first. One moment. You guys are confusing me tonight. I keep moving them around. Okay,
Got it, Lana?
yes, ma'am, thank you.
So that's basically the motion,
Yes.
okay.
Because it's got with the following conditions, 1 through 6, because the other one's gonna go in the second one.
We have a motion and a second. And can we
This is for the,
please-
just for this plan.
This is for
Okay, all right.
page 4 for the suggestion,
Six.
for approving the plat. Preliminary plat, that is. So if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Fisher,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes. Yes.
McPherson,
Yes.
Manson,
Yes.
Hemphill,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The motion carried.
Okay, now, the second portion is this proposed preliminary plat in compliance with our long-range, our comprehensive plan? And if everybody agrees, it ought to be a simple motion and second. This would be not a recommendation, but it's our position.
It's a finding, and it's
Finding.
important to note that the finding is in relation to the TIF project plan and not necessarily the preliminary plat that you just approved. So the TIF project plan is this narrative that was with your staff report about what the types of developments, also the juxtaposition of the district. It does have the map of the district in there as well. But it talks about the future development and the plan for the TIF. So it's the finding relating to the TIF project plan being in conformance with the comp plan.
Proposed TIF. So the comprehensive, the proposed TIF financing,
Just the TIF project
the
plan.
TIF project plan is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. If somebody would repeat those words, that could be a motion.
I make that motion.
Okay.
I second it.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Okay, so, can we have a roll call vote, please?
One moment.
Yes.
I want to make sure I have this correct. Motion by Commissioner Lane that the finding of the proposed TIF project plan is in conformance with the City of DeSoto Comprehensive Plan.
Yeah, that'll do. Yes.
Do you want something different?
Well, no.
You can add to it, Mike, I don't mind.
No, it's just that the planning commission finds the TIF project plan in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. Would probably be a more
Planning
concise way to.
Commission finds the proposed TIF project plan
To be in conformance with
to be in conformance.
the comp plan.
Okay, got it.
Okay, sorry about that.
You know, what seems so awkward is we're talking like monetary things, and we're rolling them into a long, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I know, but the state has particular rules
For
on this,
this.
and I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
I don't have Kevin Wimpy coming back to me and saying, we need to get this revised.
Right.
Okay, well, we have two guys sitting right here that are direct link to three people over there. We would go with your recommendation, and we've had it, we've heard it, we've made the statement, we have a second, so can we have a roll call vote?
Manson,
Yes.
McPherson,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Chairman,
Yes, I agree that the
Lane.
comp
Yes.
plan is in compliance, yes.
Thank you, Commissioners, the motion carried.
Okay. We go to. Okay, item 7B is in boy. Discuss the comprehensive plan update.
All right, thank you, Chairman. We are actually moving along through the process. As you know, last month we had our joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the City Council. Based upon that meeting and where we are in the process, I put together a schedule for getting through and completing the comprehensive plan process. As you can see, we still have a meeting with the council. We got to present the transportation chapter. And then we will, on the 28th, we'll be back here, which is our next meeting, the weekend of Memorial Weekend, I think, or is it Labor Day? I don't remember. One of those two. And we'll file it with the implementation plan, and then we go back to council. So you can kind of see how we swing back and forth between planning commission and council. Ultimately, in August, based on Kansas, as Lana mentioned, there are certain statutes that the planning commission does have to adopt the comprehensive plan. We have to hold a public hearing, which does require, the advertising and 20-day notice and all that type of process, very similar to what we go through for rezoning for the adoption of the comprehensive plan. And then ultimately, the city council accepts the comprehensive plan as a resolution. So that actually takes us up into September. So it's going to be on the agenda every time until we get through this in August for the Planning Commission. So that's kind of the process we're on now. We're working through some of the changes, and we will talk about the land use a little bit more tonight, and also the transportation plan. There certainly are some items that Mike and I have been working on as far as some of the general verbiage, things like that, that are still we're trying to clarify and working through with our consultants as far as getting the language just right for DeSoto in this process. And one thing, Richard, you've kind of mentioned is having this sort of disclaimer type statement. Our consultant is a little bit, I guess, gregarious in his view of how communities should take care of every need under the sun. And while those are certainly noble values and ideas, I think we kind of need to temper some of that and try to tone it down to something that is actually, that we can accomplish. So we are going to put something in there about that. One of the things that also kind of came up.
Mike, let me ask you a question. Okay, so it shows up here, over here, you know, shows up so many places. Would you tend to like put one blanket statement in that, or would you go through and extract each one, or
Well,
is that,
I was kind of thinking more in the, you know, like the goals and visions chapter, have that sort of in a lead-off type statement, and then also the implementation plan. It'll show up early in the chapter. There'll be some sort of statement about, you know, these are, you know, things that we're trying to pursue, but we will, in essence, that's kind of what we're after.
it's like the consultant, you know, he gets the magazines every month. He sees the new scheme, the double reverse cul-de-sac or whatever, and he, let's put that in there. Let's put the, you know, it's like stuff I don't even.
I think you kind of nailed it. It's kind of like that we kind of saw a lot of these things. It's like, wow, these are kind of great ideas, but I don't know that there's something that we're ready for or even able to even think about yet, you know. And so maybe it took us a little bit farther ahead than we're quite ready for.
So you're gonna tell him, or
Well, we've actually, and
You've already-
yeah, we've been pulling stuff out as we go.
as we're speaking,
yeah.
you're working on it behind in your desk back there.
That's correct.
All right.
So that was something that I want everyone to be aware of. The one thing that did kind of come up was the job creation, as far as we want that as a sort of a specific line item. And that kind of rolls into my next type of comments that clearly state what kind of city do we strive to be. And a couple of the examples I get, you know, there's an exurb is, you know, that by definition is sort of the secondary ring. DeSoto, Gardner, Edgerton, Spring Hill, I mean, we're, you know, the first ring would be, you know, Shawnee, Lenexa, Olathe, Overland Park, and we're outside of that. And so you gotta think about what kind of community do we want to be? Do we just want to be a bedroom community? I say more of a traditional community is that has commercial development, industrial development, you know, has a pretty good mix of those types of things. I certainly feel that the direction I get from the council, even in our discussions here at the planning commission, is that we want to be more of a traditional standalone community where we can not just relying on other places for jobs and activities and things like that. We're gonna, we talk about in our park and recreation plan, be able to do things more in DeSoto for our residents and citizens. So that's kind of the direction that we've been going with, a more, you know, practical kind of push through the comprehensive plan, which is why Mike and I have been spending a fair amount of time rewriting some of the items in there to kind of get us more to a grassroots sort of level for DeSoto. So I just want to sort of affirm that that's kind of where you think that DeSoto should be going. And part of it's even like the TIF tonight, changing that area to commercial development. It seems to me a very logical and precise way to move forward with Commerce Drive. It was zoned, you know, light industrial for a lot of years. Now it's seeing some life as a commercial development. So that's kind of things. But, you know, when 91st Street gets built, connects through to Sunflower, there might be some changes out there that sort of influence the way we want to grow and be perceived by not only our citizens but the rest of Johnson County and the greater Kansas City area. So that's kind of about what type of city do we strive to be. Some of the things about the land use category, and I've included, these are the current categories that we have in our zoning code and it's also in the comprehensive plan. We're going to kind of put a statement in there, sort of the rationale for each one of these categories. I also want to define a little bit more the mixed use category. Mike and I's thought of mixed use was it's sort of a catch-all. We don't really quite know what we want to do here. We might be some office, it might be some multifamily, some things like that. But is there any? It's kind of something I want to kind of engage everybody in a little bit. Was what do you see mixed use as? Is there some specific areas or types of uses that really can be juxtaposed and work well, kind of intertwined in a district versus where we have, you know, R1 residential? Those are sort of fairly rigid borders and edges.
Yeah, I think, Brad, sorry to jump in
Oh, go
on
right
the mixed
ahead,
use thing, but when we had our joint meeting with the council last month, there was confusion, I think, about what mixed use meant. And primarily the confusion related around, does mixed use just mean really anything goes? You know, it could be here or there, whatever, we just don't know, so we're just going to throw a catch-all at it? Or does mixed use truly mean you're not going here unless you mix up the uses? So if you're going to be here, you got to have a residential component to your business office and your light industrial development. If that's what it means, that's not at all what I had ever thought it was going to mean. And if that's what it means, we got way too much of it shown on our future land use map, way too much. If that's what it means, we're talking about this is a very niche, very specific property type of thing. If you're going to put it on a land use map, you need to be very judicial with that. If it means the other, just, hey, whatever, we just don't know, mixed use, just kind of throw that, you know, there could be more of that than the other, but maybe we already have too much mixed use on that. But that's always kind of been my understanding of that sort of land use category. And, you know, if that's it, it's a little bit of a laissez-faire attitude toward, well, whatever. we have a lot of that on there too, you know, from a future land use. I mean, all this purple, that's a lot, especially down here on Sunflower. Oh my gosh, maybe forget about that. But that's the discussion we had at that joint meeting, and just, you know, do we want to be that lax with all this purple? You know, basically anything comes in the door could be mixed use, except for maybe residential, just flat single family residential, or flat out heavy industrial. It's kind of mixed use, could be anything in between those two, really.
We don't have any kind of definition under the current regs. Is this it right here? Commercial services, offices?
Well, that's the proposed new map designation.
So there's none in any of the.
Yeah, but this definition is what we currently, that's what it says, and which is basically sort of anything goes.
I wouldn't mind a
really.
mixed use next to the commercial and industrial and things like that. I don't think I'd want mixed use mixed into any type of residential. And I see that it's touching some of the residential over here on this yellow and up here. Up on the top by K10. And then down into that big yellow square there.
So we kind of have that already. Now, Hartsville was what we just approved. There's gonna be commercial in there, right next to those homes.
Yeah.
Well, but there's a separator in there too.
Yeah, you do with
We've
a.
already got so much commercial in there.
Well, my question is, do we have to give it these purple areas, let's just talk about those, do we have to give them a specific category?
Well, no, we don't. And a matter of fact, the future land use map, it really is intentionally should not designate specific zoning categories. Like this, like on our table here, we've got this table in the comp plan update that shows mixed use. Here's the zoning categories. Here's the zoning categories. Here's the zone. Really shouldn't be doing that, because as soon as you do that, you're almost kind of assigning a future zoning category, which almost imparts some sort of a land right that doesn't. That's really not what this is for. I did pull up the definition, if I can find it, of mixed use in the current future land use plan, in the current comp plan. I'll just read it. Incorporates retail, office, and industrial uses with planned residential component. Retail and office uses may be standalone or maybe on the ground floor with residential on the upper. This category supports a variety of zoning districts. However, the focus of development within the category is not so much on use as it is on design. All development projects are well planned, designed to ensure high level compatibility with surrounding. To me, that's more of the catch-all than it is the specific. You got to mix your uses thing. Plan or overlay districts or plan unit development process should be employed to ensure the objectives. So it's kind of the PD thing where we get to not only define and administer all the physical improvements and the standards there with architectural and landscaping and buffering and all that, we also get to talk about the uses and the intensity of the uses within the planned development district. So, yeah, I think maybe there was, if we can get more toward a description like this than maybe the one we have, I think it'd be a little bit closer to what I thought that mixed use intent was. I would therefore be more comfortable having a lot of this purple on there if it's all in that planned development scenario where we could really control what happens.
I would agree.
Yeah, my opinion would be as long as the word PD shows up in the first sentence, because that Lenexa at where the storage units used to be. I can't even remember. Was that Renner Road? Where the apartments and retail below and health club, all that activity out state line, Kansas City, Missouri. Down there in the bottoms, you can see it off of the interstate. Housing above, retail on the first floor. I mean, that's kind of a not that we'd be ready for it out there at 44th and plowed cornfield. You know what I mean? But
It's kind of an up and coming thing when you look at the new Lenexa area there.
yes.
It's really, and that's what everybody wants, is a community contained with everything right there, so, yeah.
So, I mean,
But if that's the intent, then that's more of the really tightly controlled, you shall mix your uses.
Okay.
And even for Lenexa, that's a pretty small area. That's nothing compared to like this purple.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
This is
I mean,
this is thousands of acres.
Yeah.
That over there is hundreds of acres, and that's Lenexa. So, I mean, I think that sort of a plan in a future land use scenario has its place. It's just a lot less than what we've got shown
Right.
here.
Yeah. How do you know how big an area is going to be or how small it's? There's so many. It's
Don't
different.
want it or whatever. That's why I was thinking if it was not designated anything, but future use,
Future.
whatever, don't put a category on it, or maybe go the other way. Put down what you don't want out there. Personally, I think no designation at all would be the best. That way it's up for whatever comes along.
Doesn't give anybody any preconceived ideas of what they can't put out there,
Yeah.
what they can put out
Yeah.
there. Let them come to us and ask.
It's gonna have to be rezoned.
It'd be a novel idea, to have sections.
I've never
of
heard
just
of that, but that's interesting.
Whatever.
Concept.
Why not? It's still our land, or we're still in our plan. We still have control over it. We're gonna have to go through a meeting to rezone it, no matter what goes out there, because they're not gonna want all of that land in one lot. They're gonna want little pieces of it, and that's how it's gonna be sold. And Joe Blow's gonna put an apartment store, and somebody might put an apartment complex, or, so it's gonna have to come through the commission at some point anyway.
Yeah.
So, at least this way, we're not funneling ourselves or anybody else in a particular direction. Oh, well, they want homes out here, or they want business out here. Like, hey, there's a nice piece of land out there. I like the looks of it. I want to build whatever.
Well, and I think that's probably the extreme interpretation of mixed use, being the catch-all.
Yeah.
Maybe with a few certain exceptions, maybe like in this purple areas, maybe all we do is say, hey, no low density single family and no high intensity industrial.
Yeah.
And beyond that, come in with your plan.
Yeah.
Kind of where we're at with that. And in that scenario, maybe this isn't too much
I
purple.
kind of like that idea.
Well, Pete, is there such a area as PD developments?
Well, not
that-
really. We try to shy away again from designating future land use designations directly correlating to a zoning district, which is PD.
That's not a
kinda
zoning
need to
district. That's a
divorce.
planned development.
PD is a zoning category. it's one of our zoning districts. The
Where's
plan
the
becomes-
definition of PD? I've never, like, I mean, this says mixed-use PD and UDO, but I guess I didn't. I always thought a PD was a planned development. You tell us what, Mr. Developer, you show
Yeah.
us what you want to do, and we'll consider it.
It is. Sure, that's what it is.
But with very specific.
Yeah, the plan
Again,
becomes
down
the
to
zoning.
Colors
And it
and
could-
shingles and all that kind of stuff.
Could be an office park, could be residential, could be
Whatever.
industrial,
Yeah.
bunch of tire manufacturers go
But
together.
technically, it is a zoning category.
PD.
Yeah. And each separate PD has its own plan that was approved by the planning commission and council during a public hearing. Just like a rezoning.
Which is the exact opposite of not giving it any zoning at all.
It's the exact opposite. It's a very tightly controlled zoning category.
From wide open to, and anything might happen to, it will be designed by us, basically.
Yeah, right. Not just design, but the use will be defined.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything. I mean, the
Intensity
entire,
of that use.
yeah.
Well, I'm not a fan of having these zoning districts directly tied to the future land use categories. I don't think that's what you want to do. I would advocate taking those off. That's just kind of a aside. Nothing in the descriptions here ties you directly to those zoning districts. It's probably more for illustration than anything else
Well,
on this chart.
doesn't the name pretty much so describe what the zoning is?
Yeah, well, that's why. I mean, to have the actual zoning category there is more of a
It's just a-
description of what it is.
Yeah, it's just restating what was already
But
stated.
kind of planning 101 is that your future land use map does not designate future zoning districts. It designates future land use.
So you're saying you want to take those
Just take
zoning
them off.
Yeah, I think it's there just for sort of a reference to kind of get
Yeah,
you
I'm
in
sure
the
it is.
framework of what that land use is about. Mike's correct. We need
That makes sense, but then
remove
when
those.
you talk about that other one, it's like, ooh, yeah, I don't think we wanna do that.
Well, is multifamily, I mean, let's go to a simple one. A single family, multifamily. Those are, if I'm not mistaken, those are zoning districts.
Well, they closely correlate to, yeah, what would, but single family.
Commercial, the red, I mean, that's
Yeah.
different than industrial. But what threw this thing awry is the purple, the mixed use.
Mixed use is really where the
That's where it
cloud is-
triggered.
Yeah, it's really where the most confusion occurs.
I mean, to me, the other ones make sense, to show where
Yeah.
you propose residential, commercial, blah, blah, blah. And so it's just the mixed use area. That's the question.
And I think, if we're looking at it like Ian suggested, that is sort of a catch-all, and it is, we don't want to corner anybody. And if you got a great idea, let's see it. In that case, I'm not sure we have too much purple on the map.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what we're trying to get you to clarify. Is it like what Mike said earlier? Is it a very specific, tight definition of you will mix uses? You will have some residential. You will have some commercial. You will have some office, doctor type places, all within this tight little district. Or are we okay with just saying we're going to keep
See,
it
I don't-
fairly broad and we're going to wait for the market development to bring us ideas?
See, the way I read mixed uses, I see that as it covers all those descriptions that it had. Any one of those could be in there.
Yeah.
Or the entire area could be one type of business. Versus us saying you will have this, and this. It's just this area, you can do anything you want provided it's in that category.
I think that's the way most people have viewed
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I agree with you, though. I think we should take the actual zoning, like the PD and the UDO and the C1, 2, 3, just
Take
mixed
that out
use,
there.
commercial, industrial. industrial, whatever it is. They've got the description of what the zoning includes there on the right-hand side. That gives them a basic idea. None of this is the absolute, this is it, this is all that it does. These are just guidelines. Yeah, so make it as simple as possible.
When XYZ company
Gives you,
comes to town and is looking at this, and they've got that they need 40 acres for something, and they're talking to staff, and yeah, we make some noise and we do this and do that. Where do we have a place? Everything in its place and a place for everything. If we can satisfy those two, everything in its place, meaning we tell them where to put it, but a place for everything. So what does go in the purple? Mixed uses or
Well, I think
or
what you
to be
say is
announced?
that if it's everything except if XYZ is a low density single family residential developer, we probably tell them mixed use probably is not that's not the place for you. We're thinking something more along the lines of a little more intense. If they're a meat rendering facility or a ball bearing manufacturer, probably tell them the same thing. But anything in between is the future land use map envisions your sort of use for this area. Not that every particular parcel is going to be able to support whatever it is that they might have going on, but that, and of course, I think they all understand if the parcel if a parcel is currently zoned for the use that they're wanting, then we're not having this conversation about the future land use map. If it needs rezoning, then you look at the future land use map and say, well, the planning commission has looked at this area in town and they think that type of zoning, that use may be appropriate for this, so that's one indication. Obviously, no guarantees. It all has to be held a public hearing, and that public input needs to be taken, and you can't circumvent that process.
we can't even drive down there to look at it. What? It's on sunflower property. I mean, right where we're talking.
Oh, some of it is, yeah.
I mean, the majority of the purple to the bottom there is.
Well, I think we should leave the upper areas, the purple mixed use, up there where 10 is, because they're close enough to established type things. But this way down here at the bottom of sunflower, maybe we could take it out of.
Well, I think there's another thing on Brad's list there in terms of the future land use map was this idea of a long-term development, long-term future, like some designate, some overlay over these, maybe over these categories that says, we know this is a long way out. Mm-hmm. Don't get your hopes up, about kind of everything from Edgerton Road west, maybe from 115th south is like, hey, that's really long-term stuff.
and if we determine this settings now, these aren't like written in stone forever, we can go back and change that.
Next time.
Sure, yeah.
An
the future
annual
land use map.
annual review
Yeah.
is supposedly what we
Yeah,
coulda,
that's what
shoulda,
we're
woulda
required
done,
to
but
do. Yeah.
never have time. Well, I mean, this is to flex our muscles to say we're best to lead sunflower. We are the best because we're the local jurisdiction. We have a feel for what's going on.
Absolutely.
We know what should be done out.
And we have the infrastructure plans to support it.
Sunflower, basically, since the time it was built, had some sort of DeSoto involvement in it. I think we should be the ones to be determining what the future of it is.
Okay, so I guess that all kind of circles back to what Ian was saying. That's so far out there. It's so that we need a intelligent sounding description to let whoever, like Johnson County or somebody to know that they've thought about this and
I've got to agree with that as well, because there's
Well,
a
and
lot
that's
of
kind
other
of where we
areas
sort of
involved.
talked about that future urban use area and
Yeah.
come up with something, but you're right, maybe Ian, we don't show a specific use, but we do call it that future urban use area, and it kind of goes to your point, Richard, that we are now officially putting our stamp on,
We're in the game,
we're in the game.
right. We're interested, we want it.
It can't hurt us whether it'll help or not.
Yeah, whether it actually ever, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're probably
Maybe
not
it's
the
good
only
to get
city
over.
sitting here going,
yeah.
hey, I think we should come up with a plan to be the first ones.
You're exactly right.
Olathe's probably got one.
They definitely.
well,
Edgerton,
probably, yeah.
They've got the same.
I hate to say this, Olathe's had plans for over 20 years for sunflower.
They
Yeah.
just plan ahead.
Are they foaming at the mouth and just wait? I mean,
No, I'm
they
serious.
are.
I saw plans like 20 plus years ago when I worked for the county of Olathe's city limits coming out right across through here. They were established future plans. So we need to do whatever we can to stand up for ourselves for this.
Well, then, all right. So the overall message from this commission back to staff is, we want something in there that sounds logical without zoning it.
Without really committing to something.
I mean, we need
Well,
some.
I mean, there's wording in the current version of the comp plan update that says that we are actively planning, future land use wise, future utility wise, and annexation wise for the development of the sunflower to occur in the northern portions of that property, which are the cleanest and are coincidentally the closest to town, and to annex those properties, have that development occur within the city. We've stated that on more than one place in the document, pretty heavily, pretty forcefully. So, then it's just a question of what land use categories you want down there. I don't think these are bad. Maybe there's a lot of purple. There's a lot of purple down here. Maybe that shades away. It's kind of a long-term thing. We take it out, whatever. But it's not out of the realm of possibility to think that some 2,000 acre development going to want to come out there with 1,000 jobs and $80 million of investment, and it might be this gray area down here because that happens to be the cleanest in the middle. We think that needs to happen in the city. So, I mean, yes, it's long term, but I don't think we want to shoot short on this.
No,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be bashful.
we need to do everything we can to get our hands on that.
You said that gray area, that's the cleanest. Do they actually have a map of
Yeah.
most contaminated to the least contaminated?
Yeah, they sure do. They got maps out their ears out there. But what we've been working with them on are maps of particular parcels of several hundred acre chunks where all the environmental remediation is complete. Now the red tape is nowhere complete, but the dirt's clean. And now proving that, documenting that, and getting the Army to approve the KDHE, that's all the red tape stuff. That might take another 10 years. But there are these areas, and so one of those areas is kind of in this gray area right here. Another one is up in this panhandle here. There's another one down. I think it's over in this area. There's 4 or 5 of them that we've been working with them over the last 5 years or so.
How much acreage is that? That's pretty well clean.
The clean properties, I want to say there's 3 or 4 of them, and they're each about 400 or 500 acres. So it's a significant.
Where's the schools go?
Good question. No, they haven't.
I mean, I was on
From
this
Sunflower
committee.
standpoint, their company line is that they're still just kind of following the county's land use plan, which is community in a park. I think maybe you've seen versions of that. It's got the Johnson County Parks land dedicated around the exterior, and it really is kind of a residentially centered, focused sort of plan. It shows maybe some possible school locations. But I think that's just a company line. I think whatever economic development opportunity comes is going to be what their plan is. And I don't blame them for that. It's good industrial property. That's the reason the Army built a manufacturing facility out there. So, where the schools go, I don't know. They're not that far along. I don't know that they
Schools will
will
go
be
where the
for
homes
long-
go.
a long
Well, yeah, that's right. Wherever there's homes.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was on this committee with
The
the
RAB
local
board?
USD 327 about 20 years ago. And they had plans for sunflower, and they had sites picked out for schools. And that information was given to somebody. Sunflower Redevelopment Authority or whoever. That was big to, Parkland and School Land, or, of course, as soon as we show something on here, then that's, we really know it's gonna go there, so. I would just, but it hadn't come up in any discussions with.
Well, I mean, the school, I attended a meeting less than a year ago with USD 232 and the county folks and Sunflower talking about, hey, we have this pre-development agreement that says school's going to get some land. Where are you in the process? Where's that? And so, just general terms, it was a planning timeline type of a meeting. The Corps of Engineers is still saying 10 years before the thing's cleared out. They have hundreds of millions of dollars yet to spend. It's all, it's just all so premature. But we're in hopes that could be accelerated, that the northern couple thousand acres of the property is the most clean. And if the county commission sees fit, that allow some development on the northern portions or on any portion of the property before the rest of it's clean, before all the red tape is clear, we would advocate for that. The developer certainly would advocate for that. It's a different time now. When they entered the pre-development agreement, it's 2006, and that agreement says it all gets cleaned up before any of it gets redeveloped. And up until now, there's not really been a possibility to clear environmentally any portion of the property. In the next several years, there may be. So that sort of discussion is some of the emphasis for wanting to get this on our comp plan and have serious discussions about extending utilities and how we're going to serve it and what it's going to look like.
When it gets to that point, Mike, how do we, there's so many people that are interested in that property. How do we get,
well,
who determines who
interested,
gets that property?
Right now it's in the county jurisdiction. So unless and until it's annexed, it's your Board of County Commissioners. It's in control. We would like to pursue annexation with the developer, voluntary annexation for, the northern portions of that at some point in the near future. No sense in doing that really before a development is possible or some of those title complications get cleared up. So that's kind of the holding pattern we're in right now.
Now, wouldn't the area that boundaries the quarry, that would kind of dictate a little bit of what that land use is also, wouldn't it?
Yeah, certainly we want to be sensitive to
housing development next to a
the
blasting
fact there's a
area.
quarry there, yeah.
What's the life expectancy on that quarry? They've been there for a long time.
Been there
They'll-
20.
Yeah, I know.
Right at 20.
Yeah.
A short
Been there
20.
for a long time. It's
Quarries
used
can
for a long
go
time.
50 to 100 years.
There's that much, they
They'll,
figure there's
they'll
that
go
much rock?
until the rock is gone in there.
Well, that's why I was wondering if they had
look
a,
at-
Martin Marietta, is that who?
When I've talked with Corey, that's the long view that they take when they're
Oh, man, do you really?
pouring a site.
The
is-
explosions
and they
have
get
been bad this week
40, 50, 60
because
years
of
out of
the
it.
clouds.
yeah, and depending what they do, they can do like Reno did over on the east side. They can turn it into a landfill afterwards.
Well, they have a remediation plan on file with the county that doesn't have anything to do with the landfill.
No, but I mean, that is a use that has been determined to work. I mean, that's what Reno did with
Yeah,
their-
yeah, it's pretty common actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it seems to be working quite well for them.
You get money, you dig a hole and you get somebody to pay you for what you take out, and then you charge for what they
People
bring
bring
back.
back in.
That's
Absolutely.
called,
We're in the wrong business.
yeah, I think, well, I was in a neighborhood group that fought that quarry, and hopefully there's enough wedges in there that they cannot do what you're talking, But people forget, times change. But yeah, I mean,
Well, needs
30
change,
years
too.
was way back when. 30 years was mentioned. So we've been there. I think it was 2000. So we've been there about 19. Hopefully by 2030 it will be done. But that I don't think they have a quit work.
No. They've always said it depends on the economy. They'll sell as much rock as they can possibly sell, as fast as they can possibly sell it, but who knows how long that'll last.
Yeah.
Do they still have a set time to blast out there?
Noon,
Yeah.
12 to 1.
Yeah, it's
Something like that.
over the noon hour on weekdays.
Because we can feel the blast at our house. I can feel the walls shake sometimes, clear down where we're at.
I will say, since Martin Marietta took over, they seem like they've been a much better neighbor.
They,
They just,
yeah, Martin Marietta has been much better compared, anybody that lived out here way back, it was
Yeah.
a lot worse. They've got a new blasting technique and they set them off in sequence and it's better, but it's still not what I would consider, idyllic country living. You know what I mean? When that thing goes off.
Yeah, it's noisy.
It's pretty,
So
Can-
Brad,
can
can
you-
I call us back into where we're going with this,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah,
Not to be rude, we're just kind of going off on a tangent.
yeah, I
so.
appreciate that, but yeah, I think for the discussion items that, wanted to get a little clarity on for tonight, I feel good that we can move forward with getting the goals and land use chapter finalized.
okay, so why are all these definitions here? So we can read them and
Decide whether we want to keep them.
put a red line through them or?
Well,
Oh.
sure, if you choose, or you can, I mean, you can wanna come in and sit down with me for a little bit, we can do that as well.
Okay, agricultural, 10-acre minimum, there's a lot of ag land out there that's less than 10, but this is,
Well, that's per dwelling unit. If somebody wanted to put a house out there or something, that's what, so you could actually have a tract that's less than 10 acres of ag. But
well, why I'm saying
if you
that,
have a house out there, build a house, you need to have 10 acres.
that's a city regulation, not a
Right.
county. A county's got something similar. I mean, there's a bunch of different categories in there, you know, like if you're gonna build on less than 10, you can build on less than 10, and something with the laterals, and, I mean, there's a lot of options with the county. So in RA, our only option is, if somebody has 40 acres, they divide it into 4 tens and 4 houses, 4. Well, or these other uses. Public and institutional, what's that? How's that?
Well, we do have and actually also in the low-density residential, you can build like a nursing home. I'm not exactly sure that those types of uses are in there, but that's kind of what that public institutional uses in there is things for mental health facilities and that kind of sort of catch-all category. That's what our current code says.
Well, and again, it's important not to tie these descriptions too close to the zoning ordinance or the city code. This is just sort of a way to define this color on this future land use map. It's not intended to be a set restriction on, because that's set by zoning. It's not a set restriction on your lot size, just because it shows up as green on this future land use map.
Okay, so the streamway land shows up as green. You can't do much else on that, I mean, because it's floodplain, et cetera. Right, so that's RA zoning, all the green along the streamways.
So it's park, well, the future land use map has it as park and open space. So in these. I'm not
Okay,
sure
so
why
this
it's all
doesn't,
that.
this doesn't tie at all to this map.
It
This
seems
is
like it
just,
should, but it doesn't look like it does.
this is just this is what RA zoning is, 10 acres, and it can
Well,
include those uses.
Agricultural. I'm sorry, so agriculture is it's dark green here on this table, but in this map, it's a lighter color green. The dark green is parks and open space, and I don't see a definition here necessarily in the table for parks and open space. But the dark green is what you're talking about. Is that what you're referring to when you talk about that it's along the stream corridor? Yeah. This area in here is to be dedicated to Johnson County Parks and Rec. That's part of the Sunflower redevelopment plan. This is out here is the Lexington Lake Park. We've shown our Riverfest Park, Widow Big Knife, some other areas that are already parks. That's the dark green.
Okay, I'm still a little confused, but maybe I'm always confused a little bit. So about this kind of stuff, you know what I mean? It's a little. So
Yeah, no,
a
it's
golf
not-
golf course or a private club or a public and institution can develop on an RA's.
See, it's the RA. This isn't a zoning classification. That's why I wanted that RA off of this chart.
Okay.
This chart, this is showing what the definition of agriculture as it relates to the future land use map. So the agriculture on the future land use map is a lighter green, like up here in the floodplain areas. This darker green is parks and open space.
Parks and Rec. It just doesn't
Okay.
match
So
here.
the color doesn't match up very well.
So
That's the source of confusion.
should these recommended uses adjust, or what,
No, I
are we
think they're
to discuss them?
No, I think, well, I mean, we could discuss them for sure. But it seems like these are just recommended. These are the examples of the types of uses that we feel are appropriate in these areas that are shown as agricultural on the future land use map. So, primarily that's going to be crop fields, or maybe some farm ground or something like that. But that's not to say you can't have a golf course or a single family house down there, or
Public or
greenhouse.
institutional, man, that. Okay, nobody else sees that as odd, or then,
Yeah, I mean, public, you could take public out of there. I mean, that might not be appropriate.
I can see a golf course, private club or lodge, yeah, I suppose, I'm not sure what a lodge is exactly, but I think the word hunting, I mean, I don't know, I was catching me off guard a little bit. So is this the time we're supposed to be discussing this, or are you gonna come back and present this?
I don't know, Brad, I don't want to speak for you. I don't know that we intended to delve into the details of each one of these. The main one was that mixed use thing that has
Okay.
caused some confusion at the joint meeting. And there's some tweaks to definitely could be done to all of these categories for sure. First of all, taking the zoning off.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think the intent was to go through each one with fine tooth comb. I think for the most part we have them pretty well defined in the proposed comp plan. If you have concerns with them, sure, yeah, let's hear them. I think your reservation about public and institutional uses is valid. We could probably take that off of there.
Yeah, I would think that one ought to come off. Whatever a private club is, I guess it can be. If it's private, nobody knows what it is. Then, just like, if you don't mind, read low density residential. That's a golf course. A golf course could go in there. Public, institutional, single family detached. That sounds good. Medium density. Those sound pretty good. Multifamily. Those look pretty good. Downtown overlay. I mean, that all seemed reasonable. Mixed use, that's the big one right now, that you're either gonna delete it or reword it, or that's what I'm hearing.
I think we're aiming
Delete or
toward
reword or.
broadening that description.
Okay. The commercial, that sounds good. Light industrial sounds good. Heavy industrial sounds good. Public, semi-public, institutional. Can somebody throw a little light on that? That's the very last one.
Those are
3-3.
things like our sewer plant, like the school campus, the fire station, some of the well fields, the wellheads down at the well field.
Okay.
Westar has a couple substations that we're showing as that
Our public works facility.
public works stuff.
Yeah, water tower.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So we
Anybody?
did take public and institutional uses off of agricultural then?
I think we should. Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds
probably
like
should.
sound like we should.
Then you got two maps here. One's the land use, and we discussed the big purple area as maybe in need of revision, and the other one is transportation. This is kind of neat. This big road could come up. You still live out on Kill Creek?
Yeah.
All right, this road would come right down your driveway. No, it wouldn't, but it. Can somebody just shed a little light on, like, these crossroads that are south of K10, Highway 10? Like, there's a blue one. Let's see, come down Kill Creek. I see 103rd, but from 103rd and Kill Creek, move to the north. I guess that's a mile or a half mile.
Half a mile, I think. Yeah.
What's that blue dashed? It lines up with 99th Street.
So the dash lines are potential future road corridors that
Yeah.
aren't on an existing corridor. And typically those are just on the half section lines, section or half section lines. Unless there's some big physical barrier where construction of a road wouldn't be possible or recommendable. Of course, the solid lines are existing segment, collectors or arterials on existing roads. There's really not a whole lot of magic to it. We did in the Sunflower property, we were purposeful about these alignments here, matching up with those future land use designations that we show there, that tie back to the infrastructure extensions. Beyond that, they're more or less a grid on section lines and half section lines, more or less.
Okay. Yeah, because the quarry at the end of 103rd Street, at the end of the future 99th Street,
Yeah, the
that
quarry's
basically would dead end into quarry
there.
ground.
Right. Yeah. The other thing on this map, we did add the future bike pads, so sidewalks and bike pedestrian trails on this. So you see the yellows there and the green dashed lines. Those come from the Parks and Rec Master Plan recommendations.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions or comments, or just? And 91st Street, it gets pretty rugged over in there, but boy, that's one that it just seemed like that really needs, at some point in time, that would be a real nicety to have that thing.
91st and 95th, I mean, if our growth area, if that urban growth area is to be towards Sunflower and toward the west, we have to have alternate east-west connections aside from K10.
Why does the 103rd Street, as it approaches Evening Star, it does that little loop? That's because the current road, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It does kind of a.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't probably have to do that, does it?
I'm just curious.
Not sure. I think that's probably a holdover from the previous version.
Yeah.
Not sure why.
Yeah, that's Blacktop Road.
Yeah, I mean, like at Moonlight Road or Evening Star, it kind of goes down like 100 feet past that intersection and then kind of dead ends, doesn't it? 103rd. Well, I can't remember. I'm thinking of.
That's old K10.
That's old K10. All right. Well, there must be some reason.
I think
Maybe there's a county commissioner that lives right there and wants.
Yeah,
they want the
we
road
wanted to
going
get
in
his
front of
house. Yeah,
And
his
Okay.
house is right on that alignment. So we
all
wanted
right,
to get it.
well, all right. That's all I got. Nobody else has anything with it? Somebody wants to make an emotion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Motion second. Favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Brad, just in like going back, you start reading those definitions from way back that have been in there, and you don't